the teleprompter and the iPads could both go down. I experienced that in Arkansas at one point. The teleprompter died and my iPad was frozen. What do you do? Well,
welcome to the Next Level Journalist, where you will hear from some of the best journalists in the business or who have been there, done that, and willing to share with you what they've learned so you can get better, faster. My guest today is the morning anchor at WZZM TV in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Jay Plyburn. So good to see you, my friend.
Kyle, it is good to see you. Good to be here with you today.
Well, Jay, he has been all over the country, folks, not just with his job, but with his life. Literally the past 6+ months, he and his wife have been traveling the country just for enjoyment. But I'll let him explain all that. And we're also going to talk about his career journey and whatnot, advice, tips, all the above. So, Jay, let's talk about what you've been doing, the past couple of weeks, because, you just started there in Grand Rapids. So take us back when you guys were traveling, what inspired those travels, and then we'll talk about your career journey in just a moment.
A great travel adventure. I wish I could take credit for this playing out, but it was definitely not my idea. My wife pitched the idea about a year ago when we inherited a van from her late uncle. She pitched me on this idea. I said, I have no desire to live in a van and travel the country. And she said, no, we'll be living out of the van and we'll be exploring the country. We should really do this, before we have kids. We are newlyweds. And so I finally got on board with the idea. Plus, a lot of things kind of lined up for us last year, all signs pointing to we should do this. She resigned from her job in early June for ethical reasons. 2 weeks later, I found out that my department with NBC Atlanta was being entirely dissolved, and our lease was about to be up at our apartment. So we were just kind of unburdened by everything tying us to Atlanta all at once. Meanwhile, we had been renovating this van in the middle of the pandemic. And so it was like, okay, well, let's take our show on the road. So that's kind of how the whole travel adventure came about. And it was incredible. We left Atlanta in mid-August and we ended up going, we went a variety of places, but we ended up in the northwesternmost portion of the country and then the southernmost portion of the country. We ended up doing 26 states, 20 different national parks, countless cities, towns, state parks, national monuments. We saw and did so many cool things on this adventure, as you might call it, an adventure in a van. And we had the time of our life. I would recommend this to anyone who has the means to do this. We did it fairly cheap. We made it a very affordable, and we kind of blogged about it a little bit online as we did this. She launched a page called The Sunny Mooners, and we talked a lot about how we were able to do it for cheap and where we had been. It was mostly just kind of a compilation of pictures and videos of our favorite places. But what we found is that this is something a lot of people dream about. It is 100% doable, and you don't have to save a ton of money. We did save some money ahead of time. We were given advice from a friend of hers that if you have about 10 grand to cover your expenses for 6 months, that you could make this work. And we lived a little more lavish lifestyle on the road than we probably should have. We've lived as vegans for the past few months, cheating vegans on occasion, but we went to some awesome vegan restaurants and got a variety of entrees. And again, we could have done it for cheaper than we did, but we made it work. We had the time of our life. And I think we would still be traveling the country right now. But as it was, a good job offer came along and we landed in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So that's where we're set up now.
So talk us through that process. So while you're out on the road, were you looking for opportunities? Did the opportunity come knocking? How did that work?
Yeah, so I actually was not looking for an opportunity. We decided to embrace this whole travel adventure without being burdened by a job at the same time. There's a lot of people who can do it and work remotely, and that's all fine and good, but we didn't want to have to constantly be searching for a Wi-Fi connection. We didn't want to have to be on the clock, so to speak, while we were traveling and seeing, the sights and sounds and all that. So we agreed that we would just save the money and then live off of that for as long as we could. However, in early October, my agent reached out to me and he said, hey, there's a station in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They saw your reel. They're really interested in you for the morning anchor job. I think you should talk to them. To be quite honest, when we first heard this, we were like, nah, we don't want to go to Michigan. It's too cold up there. It's up in the north. But I wanted to follow through with this process of at least talking to these people, hearing about the offer, meeting virtually the morning team and just seeing kind of what the offer was like. So I went through the process. I spoke to the news director, had a really good conversation with her, and found out immediately that she and other people at the station were following our adventures online. They were not only following us, but they were supportive of this, that we were traveling the country. A lot of people, our parents included at one point, kind of thought we were crazy for traveling the country in the middle of a pandemic. But here I found out this news director, is following us online and embracing this crazy lifestyle that we've chosen to live. Then I talked to the general manager. He also thinks it's awesome that we renovated a van and we're traveling. And the more people I met from this station, the more I became convinced that these are really good people. I may want to work for these people. And so it was a great just initial conversation with the news director, with the general manager, and then I met with the co-anchor and I met with the producers on the morning team, and everybody just was so welcoming and nice, and it became abundantly clear that this would be a good work environment. So that's kind of how that process all came about. I did all of the interviews and all of the auditions virtually. I actually sat in a Panera Bread and did my audition via Zoom months ago while people were, ordering their food and whatnot in the background. And we made it a reality. They ended up telling me that because of COVID, they can't fly people out like they normally would. They would bring someone out and show them the news station and everything, but they couldn't do that because of the pandemic. But they said, since you are traveling the country right now, if you would want to, pop into Grand Rapids, we could, maybe point you in the right direction as far as a couple good restaurants are concerned and whatnot. So we did that. We drove to Grand Rapids and in the, right at the beginning of winter time, and experienced it for what it was worth. We knew it was going to be cold, and it definitely was and still is extremely cold. But we kind of knew to expect that. We had also done our research in Grand Rapids and thought that it looked like there was a lot of really positive aspects to this area. It seems to be a growing community, a very progressive community, and it has a lot of things going for it in line with our beliefs. And so we took this whole job audition and interview process very seriously. And then the official offer came down like the last week of the year. And we talked about it, we prayed about it, decided, okay, we could do this. So signed a contract, and here we are. I've been on the air for about 2.5 weeks now.
Wow. Crazy. And this guy, and I'm going to put pictures up throughout this conversation. So the words of me explaining what Jay looked like on the road were classic, because I was following Jay along the way. He and his wife, Jay and I go back a little bit, but that was fun to live, through your experiences. And honestly, it's encouraged me and my wife to, we're actually going to explore Michigan this summer for up to 4 weeks. So that's our version of traveling. We're going to take it easy. We're just going to dip our toes. I mean, we have 2 little girls, as you know, Jay. So we're going to dip our way into it, because that is so cool that you guys did that. What an experience. And the things you guys saw and did, so awesome. So it was cool to live through you and see those things. So anybody that sees this, go to Sunny Mooner's Facebook page and just see the country. I mean, they did. These Jay and Wendy covered so much. So all right, Jay, let's stop daydreaming. I'm daydreaming. You live it. For just a moment, let's go through your career journey. What got you interested in TV, and do you remember that moment and your pursuit of where you are today? Obviously, you can cut out the 6-month journey of on the road. We got that covered. But take us back to the beginning and bring us up to speed.
Sure. So my story is maybe a little unique, different from other journalists out there. I grew up in a very theatrical family, a family that was involved in anything and everything where theater was involved. Talking community theater, church productions. Was in show choir in high school. So I just kind of grew up in this performance-based family and knew that in some regard I wanted to be in front of people, whether it was in front of a camera or in front of a live audience. And so I wasn't sure how to pursue that exactly. I ended up at an acting and modeling conference in Orlando, Florida, my sophomore year of college. And at the time, I was studying business management, still kind of unsure of what I wanted to do with my life. And I spoke to a talent coach who said, if you really want to pursue acting or performing of some kind, you can get a theater degree or you can get a broadcast journalism degree. And it was explained to me that, people like Brad Pitt studied broadcast journalism and Denzel Washington studied broadcast journalism. And this was mind boggling to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, these successful movie stars studied journalism. So I went back and immediately changed my degree to broadcast journalism, thinking, okay, I'm going to get out of college and I'm going to move to Hollywood. I'm going to be the next action movie star. And the reality set in, and I didn't move to Hollywood. I actually immediately landed my first news opportunity in West Texas. And it was an interesting phone call with that news director who said, we're looking at you for this weekday reporter job, and then you'll be the weatherman on the weekends. Not a meteorologist, because I don't have a degree in meteorology, but I'll be the weatherman. I told him, I said, I don't have any training in weather systems or any of that. I'm not even really interested in that. At least I wasn't at the time. And they said, oh, it's all good. It's West Texas. Weather doesn't really change a whole lot out here. And so I agreed to this job, sight unseen, never having been to West Texas. And I moved out there. That was in 2008. Signed I think it was a 2-year contract early on to be the one-man band news reporter. At least that's what we called it at the time. I think multi-skilled journalist now is probably what they call it, and weekend weatherman. And within my first few months there, I had the opportunity to fill in at the anchor desk, and it went really well for me. And I remember that moment. I was super nervous, but I'd been like pulling for it. I really wanted to anchor, and it went so very well for me that they came in and they said, okay, that was great. Do you want to be our weekend anchor and join the weekend team? And I said, yeah, I never really wanted to do weather on the weekends. You just kind of had me doing that. So then it was kind of pulling a little bit of a hat trick. I was doing weather on the morning show for a while we were trying to replace our morning meteorologist. And then I was also anchoring on weekends. So I was kind of juggling the roles. I ended up doing news, weather, and sports before it was all said and done in West Texas. That's small market America for you. But I made some great friends. You and I know each other from West Texas, and really kind of got my feet wet, got my hands dirty with the whole reporting, and that this is the bare bones of TV news, especially when you're working in a small market like that. You kind of do need to know how to do it all, as far as the shooting and the editing and setting up your own interviews, and just kind of being the person who's capable of doing it all, because it kind of, in my opinion, helped create a real well-rounded experience. I could have gone and gotten my master's degree or whatever, continued my education, but the way I looked at it was I was continuing my education by jumping into the workforce in this kind of low-level reporter job. And I mean, no disrespect to people who are starting off as reporters, but you need to start at a level where you can really get a solid understanding of the shooting and the editing and the writing and the producing, and just be fully immersed so that you know how to do all of it, because everything makes more sense to you once you do it like that. So that was the start of it, was Market 150, whatever it is, in Midland, Texas. And I loved my experience out there. I ended up being out there for 3 years. That turned into the weekend anchor job for me out there, which turned into the weekend anchor job for a bigger market 100 roughly, in Northwest Arkansas. So I moved there it's like the first week of 2011 that I started my job with the ABC affiliate in Northwest Arkansas. That was a great gig. So I was now reporting on the weekends reporting on the weekdays, anchoring on the weekend evenings. Through a unique series of events, I switched stations. I went from the ABC affiliate to the CBS affiliate in Northwest Arkansas. I actually was able to jump into the morning anchor role for the competitor there in Northwest Arkansas. Fantastic story, maybe one for another day, but I became the morning anchor for the CBS affiliate, which was and still is the highlight of my career. We had such an awesome morning team in place, and I knew it was going to be a crazy schedule. I mean, getting up at 2:30 in the morning, and then we're live from 4:30 to 7. But I embraced it, and we had a lot of fun on the mornings. And that's when I kind of started getting this mindset of, okay, maybe my kind of crazy personality is more in line with mornings, helping people start their day on the right foot. I try to bring a lot of energy to whatever I do. And that bodes well on mornings as people are waking up. So that went really well. I was there for a few years, and then I decided to actually pursue the original passion, which was acting. And I did not re-sign my contract when it was up there in Northwest Arkansas, and I ended up moving to Atlanta, Georgia, which is like one of the hubs for TV and film activity now. Georgia being, I think, still the number one place for TV and film productions, passing California a few years ago. And it's because they have these incredible tax incentives in place. So I went out to Atlanta and I hit the ground running, and I had so much fun. I had a little bit of success um, as an actor. I got involved in some acting classes, and I I kept getting cast as a news reporter and network shows, just life imitating art, art imitating life. And I was very thankful to get those roles. And I have a recurring role on The Resident, which is a Fox medical drama. And I'm really thankful for those opportunities. Meanwhile, NBC Atlanta had an opening for a reporter for this pilot program that they were doing called the My News Initiative. And so I applied for that. They ended up making me an offer I couldn't refuse. So now I'm an actor in my free time, and I'm a full-time journalist once again. So I really had the best of both worlds in Atlanta. As it was, this pilot program uh, dissolved in the middle of COVID-19. Mid 2020, they pulled the plug on our program after almost 2 years, and that was no big deal. I mean, we kind of saw that coming. It was a pilot anyway that was only supposed to last 6 months, but they kept re-upping us and re-upping us, and so I just go with the flow. And so I held on as long as I could, and then they pulled the plug, and that, as I already mentioned, allowed Whitney and I to say, okay, let's do some traveling. Let's live off of our savings, and so that's kind of what led us into the big travel adventure, which is what brought us to Michigan, which is where we are now.
Hopefully people are paying attention, from bringing energy to learning a little bit of everything. It's funny you say it's now a multi-skilled journalist. I mean, yeah, it was a one-man band when we were back in Texas, and then MMJ and
MMJ, yeah.
mobile newsroom. I mean, I guess they still use these terms, but anyway, the point is learn as much as possible so you understand the big picture. And Jay understands the big picture. He just isn't the face on TV, that co-anchor. He may be now, but you certainly had to pay your dues along the way. So much great stuff there, Jay. How about the lessons learned along the way? Anything that stands out to you? It's like, I learned these things at this stop along the way, or I learned these things, whether they be intangibles or skills. What comes to mind? Some lessons learned that you can share with our audience that they can get better and avoid maybe those mistakes.
Oh gosh, so many lessons learned in this line of work. One of the things that is a consistent lesson for me, I'm a perfectionist. I want everything to be as absolutely perfect as possible. So it's interesting that I would work on live television, because very rarely is live TV perfect. I mean, you can plan and you can plan, but things just don't always go as planned when you're dealing with that much technology, and you're dealing with, you have to have room for human error. And so I have learned to shake the perfectionist off a little bit, and I still strive for perfection on a daily basis, but it's tough. It's tough in this line of work. So I guess one of the big lessons for me is just to, and it comes from Boy Scouts as well, to be prepared, always be prepared. And in this crazy line of work, any number of things can happen, especially from the perspective of an anchor. So in the studio on a daily basis, we have 2.5 hours of content that we have to get through between 4:30 and 7, as it is with this market and this morning show. What could go wrong? Well, anything in the world could go wrong. The power could go out, and that causes a variety of issues. That doesn't happen very often, but that's something that I did experience in West Texas. We lost power. It was actually Friday the 13th. It was very weird, and all of a sudden, all the systems rebooted, and I'll never forget that. So you have to be ready for literally anything to happen. The teleprompter could go down, and so all of a sudden, your scripts that are right there in the camera are no longer available, as it is in here in Grand Rapids. I have an iPad in front of me at all times, so I can jump to that and go right to the story that just disappeared from the teleprompter. but the teleprompter and the iPads could both go down. I experienced that in Arkansas at one point. The teleprompter died and my iPad was frozen. What do? Well, be prepared. You can always pitch to weather and we can get an update on the weather. You can throw to a commercial if you absolutely have to. So I'm kind of just always in my head trying to be prepared for anything and everything. And I want the viewers to see as perfect of a product as possible. I want it to look flawless to them, even though it's not flawless behind the scenes. So I'm kind of always thinking about that. The other thing that I thought was interesting that I learned a few years ago is the viewers actually like the little behind the scenes look. They are okay when not all is perfect and all of a sudden, things are kind of going south in the newsroom or in the studio. It's okay to look into the camera and say, bear with us, we're dealing with breaking news situation, yada yada, whatever it is. The viewers can embrace that. Matter of fact, I think they like that these days because they've become so accustomed and used to this very, very formal news program that they like to change every now and again, a behind the scenes glimpse of what's going on, or here's our reporter getting ready to talk about this and this. So that's tough for me as a perfectionist. I'm like, oh no, we don't want to show them behind the scenes. It's messy back here. But in reality, people like that. They like to see kind of the nuts and bolts of how things happen. And so I've started trying to do more with social media, giving a live look on Instagram or Facebook or whatever to say, okay, here we are, whether it's putting my makeup in the morning or as they're getting the camera shots ready in the studio, people really seem to enjoy this behind the scenes look that they would never really get when they turn on the news, but they can get it through social media. So I know that's a really crazy answer to your question, but
that was great stuff. I mean, stuff that I hadn't heard. What are the odds of your prompter going down, the iPad for freezing up? But to think about worst case scenarios. I mean, that's great stuff for even seasoned vets. To get someone to say, hey, well, I haven't thought about that before. To get people thinking about always being prepared, because you're right. More often than not, you produce the show, but it's not going to go to plan more often than not. So that's great stuff, Jay. How about your quote unquote success, if you will? You've clearly done well for yourself and for lack of better words, climbing that ladder. You've gotten plenty of opportunities in big markets, medium markets, what have you. And what do you think you would credit that to? What makes you unique and being able to have the success that you've had thus far?
Oh gosh, I didn't give up. I mean, one of the things for me was I knew early on that I wanted to be at the anchor desk or in the studio. We don't even have much of a desk right now. We're standing 6 feet apart in the same room, but there's no physical desk. I knew I wanted to be in the anchor role, and I was happy to put in my time as a reporter. Like I said, I was happy to do weather for however long it was needed. But when I got to West Texas with that first news job, I immediately told the news director, my goal is to anchor at some point. And he said, okay, cool. We'll make it happen at some point. Oddly enough, he did not allow me to anchor. I asked time and time again, can I fill in today? Can I fill in today? And it was no. He said, I don't think you're ready. I love that guy. He ended up getting fired. And it was the next guy who came in that did give me the opportunity to anchor for the first time. And it was just a fill-in opportunity. But I can't take too much of the credit here, but I do think back to those initial conversations where I knew what I wanted. I knew what my goal was, and I verbalized it. And I told both news directors, and this guy said, hey, I really want to anchor when the time is right. Let me know. And I feel like I was prepared for it when the opportunity finally came around. It went well for me, and that turned into a weekend anchor job, which turned into a main anchor job, which got me to where I am now. And so I think a lot of I think just telling people, hey, here's where my heart is, here's what my goal is. Can you help make this a reality? And the reality may have been that no, the anchor opportunity never came around, but it did because I told them that's what I wanted. And I don't think they were just throwing me a bone. I think they knew that I was uniquely interested in it. And so they gave me the opportunity. Had I failed as an anchor, I wouldn't still be doing it. I don't think I would have wanted to continue doing it had I failed at the anchor desk or failed, as an anchor in any capacity. But it went well, and so, here I am still working as a news anchor full time.
Yeah, to verbalize something makes it a reality, right? I mean, you can, if you keep it, plugged into here and you don't share that with anybody, even if you don't share it out loud with yourself, it's not really going to become real. But I love that you shared it with them, said, hey, this is what I'm going after. This is what I want. And it worked out for you. So I don't think that's a coincidence at all. You're right. I mean, they knew it. And then when that opportunity came, you were prepared, as you mentioned before as well. So that it's all huge. All that stuff is huge. So with that said, how did you prepare? How did you develop your skill set, you think, that has really helped you be, successful? How did you develop those skills, you think?
So to go back to my family and being raised on a stage, you might say, there were a lot of, not even classes. I mean, I took theater classes in college because I knew that would be fun, but just participating in local theater and doing dramas at church and doing stuff at high school, you learn a lot about how to control your breathing and how to control anxiety and this and that. A lot of things that are very similar when you get in front of a camera, because there's nerves involved on a daily basis. But I credit a lot of it to, like I said, the classes and really just the opportunities I had as a child. And look, I didn't even really have an opportunity as a child. My parents were just always like, okay, we're going to go audition for this show now. Let's all go audition as a family. I didn't have a chance to say no. If I had said no, I don't think it would have made a difference. We would have gone to audition anyway. So I'm thankful that I was kind of thrown into the mix at an early age, because it did help me develop some skills that came, that you would associate with being on live television or being live on a stage for a group of people. Now, what I find is interesting is a lot of people who do full-time theater, they can get up in front of a stage and sing and dance and do all this, but then they get nervous in front of the camera. It's kind of the opposite for me now. I am unusually comfortable in front of a camera. It doesn't matter how many thousands of people are watching live, but on a stage in front of a live audience is a very different thing. You can see the people, you can feel the energy, and that's where I really get nervous, and I have to really kind of bring myself down and try to control my breathing. I do a lot of praying, dear God, please don't let me mess in front of all these people. And so, but that's part of the gig too. The anchors and even reporters, a lot of times they get asked to MC events, sometimes with hundreds of people out there, and so you really have to kind of be able to do that as well, because it's a big part of the job, and it's an honor to be able to MC different fundraisers and galas, and it's a fun thing. But for me, that's the most nerve-wracking of all. Not being live on television every day, but standing in front of a crowd of, I don't know, a few dozen people. That's more nerve-wracking to me than anything.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can sit in front of this camera and I can talk to, a million people. I was the same way when I was in TV, because the reality is it's just you, the camera, and, some floor operators, maybe another anchor, whether, but I was the same way. But you put me in a room with, a dozen people and it's like, okay, you start to clam up a little bit, but it's a different thing. Jay, let's end with something fun here. Not that it hasn't been fun. I love to hear about your journey. Most embarrassing TV moment or moments and what you learned from it, if you can recall anything in particular, which knowing you, there's no way you don't have at least one or two that come to mind.
Most embarrassing TV moments. Oh gosh, I haven't actually thought about that. I think as far as most maybe embarrassing moments in life, I do believe I went on stage in a production at one point with my fly unzipped, and I didn't think about it. I didn't find out till after the fact. That's embarrassing, again, in that live setting in front of people. But most embarrassing, okay, I do know one. When I was anchoring the morning show in Arkansas, I was pitching to a reporter who was live in the field, and in the studio, one of the light bulbs exploded, and nobody did anything wrong. It just overheated and exploded. And I was on camera at the time, and the reaction is priceless. I clearly thought someone was shooting at me, because I did one of these, made this horrible face and like ducked for cover. It was right as I was pitching to the reporter. So I had already said what I had to say in the teleprompter. Then this light exploded. I make this crazy face. The reporter is none the wiser. She goes on about her business with the live report. And then they come back to me and everything's fine. I I did have to draw attention to it as we tossed to break. Say, hey, if you saw me make some ridiculous faces, we were tossing Meredith a minute ago. Here's why. Because I had to think people would be questioning, why did he do that? Why did he just look like that?
5 News reporter Meredith Marney spoke with some of the graduates. She joins us live with more. In case you're just joining us, a light exploded in the studio moments ago.
I'll hand it to you. Nothing rattles you.
Well, my face told a different story, but the show must go on, right?
I appreciate you, man, for making time for this. I want to respect your time because I know we've gone a little long here. There's plenty we could talk about, but I really do appreciate your time and everything that you shared with us. And look forward to visiting with you in Michigan this summer.
That sounds great. It's my pleasure, Kyle. Thanks for having me on here.
And thank you for checking out this channel. If you found this content beneficial, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share it with someone you think might find it beneficial as well. Because this channel was simply started and created to serve you, to help others grow, to learn how other successful TV journalists do or did it. So take what serves you so you can get better faster and reach your next level.